to Psychology Today. I'm your host, Ann Morrow. Thank you for watching. Our show is about bicycling and also the celebration of our local cyclists. We hope that Psychology Today helps inspire you to ride a bike and be more mindful of safety. Those of us that volunteer for Psychology Today believe there's an abundance of bicycling activity to celebrate in the Portland metro area, and we endeavor to introduce you to the people who help our community of cyclists. I want to share a quick thank you to our capable crew behind the scenes, volunteers who make the show possible. Our guest is a member of Portland Bicycling Club, and he's done numerous loaded tours on his bicycle. There seems to be a renewed interest in loaded touring, that is, being self-contained on your bicycle, whether with a trailer, panniers, or a combination. Our guest, Dave McQuery, will share some of the highlights of his adventures, and in the second part of the show, he'll describe what he carries with him. So Dave, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you along here. So I'd like to start with having our guests tell us a little bit about themselves.
Well, I was born in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. My sister was born in Denver. My little brother was born in Chicago Heights, Illinois. I changed schools 7 times before the 6th grade. We moved so much that I joke sometimes that my dad could have stayed in the Army after World War II and we would have moved less. But anyway,
You've just been around,
and
you're retired now, right?
Yep.
So how did you initially get into bicycling?
Well, I did a lot of backpacking and so on in order to, you can't go backpacking every weekend. So in order to stay in shape and get in shape, I started working out at a local club and doing a lot of running. I captained a Hood to Coast team for 6 years, and also organized a couple of Portland to Coast walking teams. And then I started thinking that, maybe my running career wasn't going to last forever, so I bought a bike in 1998. And the way things went, I bought the bike in September, and in November I tore my medial meniscus in my left knee as a result of not having any supports, and I tore the ACL in high school. And so I had a couple of arthroscopies on the knee and started, spending a lot more time riding. And since I couldn't, I could run, but it doesn't feel right, and step in one more hole and tear the rest of that meniscus out of there, and then everything goes away. So,
That sounds like a somewhat typical way that people get into cycling. That they're runners and then somehow they transition to cycling. So what about now? What role does the bicycle play in your life right now? Why is cycling important to you personally?
Well, 2 things. One, it's my principal form of exercise. It's good recreation. I put more miles on my bicycle the last 4 or 5 years than I have on my car. It's also a wonderful social opportunity, right, with the club rides and so on, even though those got cut back or eliminated for more than a year.
Yeah, we're kind of up and running
but
right now.
It's really important to me.
Yeah, it seems to be. And what's your favorite bike ride right now?
Well, it's my favorite bike ride right now. I separate bike rides from the tours.
Yeah.
I kind of like the Wednesday wanderings that we've done. There's also a loop starting at Clark College and going out around Lacamas Lake. That's 33 miles with a nice little coffee stop at Larson's Bakery.
Yes, one of your favorites.
It's one of my favorites.
I've got that on the calendar later this month. I can't remember when. And so how did you get into loaded touring? When and why?
Well, It kind of flows from the backpacking. This is, the gear is pretty much the same, except you need a bike and some bike equipment. But you need light stuff, you need camping equipment, you need cooking equipment, you need sleeping bags, and so on. And so not being able really to run, I thought I'd give the touring a try, and I bought it turns out it was actually an off-road touring bike, but I've modified it so I use it all the time. First tour was down to Shampooey for one night, and then Silver Falls the next night, and then home. And then Jim O'Horo, I met him at the community cycling center where we were both volunteers there, and I got intrigued by his Columbia Gorge Explorer, which we'll get to a little bit later. And I signed up for that. It's a 4-day loaded tour, and I've done that a number of times. And another friend of mine and I went to up to Coeur d'Alene, Alaska, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and back. Gone 19 days, and that was a wonderful trip, although, it wasn't free of mishaps. Like the second night, I stepped on Scott's glasses. But
that would be his problem, not yours.
Well, yeah, he's amazing what he can fix.
That's true. Okay, and so I just wanted to comment. So a lot of times I think people in the Portland metro area do that kind of trip from here to Shampooey, not necessarily Silver Falls, but it's kind of a good test run, it seems like, that people use.
It is. It's got varied road conditions. You got to get up over Rex Hill, which is a pretty good test of the rider and the bike. They have a nice hiker-biker area down at Shampooey, complete now with, they've got a little shelter down there and some bike tools and a stand.
Oh.
So, if you need to tweak your bike, it's not hard.
Okay, I didn't have that as a topic, but I think that's kind of important. So I believe that your most ambitious tour, like you said, was up to Alaska. So why did you choose going to Alaska?
I have tried to do more extreme things. I've got a niece who's done the Iditarod with her 50 dogs. I mean, not on that ride. She takes 16. I've got another niece who's done the Hawaii Ironman 3 times. And I decided I would like to ride from coast to coast, Astoria to Plymouth Rock. But after my dad died and after 6 months of pretty intensive caregiving, I needed some time to decompress and spent 4 months back in Boston with my sister. And I decided I wanted no part of riding in New England. So I needed another goal, and Alaska was far away, so I thought I'd try that one. And as it turned out, my friend O'Horo, he had the same thing, and he'd worked out a route and everything. And unfortunately, by the time we had the meeting of minds on this, he was too ill to do it. But I used his cue sheets, and they were marvelous. Of course, once you get into Canada, there's only one road, so you don't really need you need the turn-by-turn instructions.
Get on this road and stay there.
Yeah.
Nice. And so what was as you were planning this and using Jim O'Horo's information, what was your general plan for the route and the timeline for it?
Well, I had been back from Massachusetts for a few months, and that's when I decided I wanted to do this. And I started talking about it and see if I could get somebody else to go along, and no takers except for Morrow, but he just couldn't do it. And so over time, I started packing up the apartment again. I put everything in storage, and I was working a temporary job in Wilsonville, and was living up in Beaverton. And so every day I ride my bike to Wilsonville and back, and then I'd do a longer ride on the weekend, and acquired some more bike tools, and what I'll get to later, what I take. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of how that went.
So ultimately, what was the configuration of how you carried all your gear on this trip?
Well, most people ride with panniers. Mm-hmm. They're basically saddlebags for a bicycle. And I've ridden with those. My early tours were with panniers, and they make the bike feel ponderous to me. You're raising the center of gravity, and plus, even with a kickstand, you can't park the bike. You got to lean it up against something, unless you got a concrete thing dead level. Maybe you can balance the bike, but with the trailer, which is what I use primarily, I just put a Velcro strap around the brake, put the kickstand down, and I can park on any hill.
Now, what kind of trailer do you use?
I have a two-wheel trailer. I had a one-wheel trailer, and that was okay, but I had, that had the same problem with parking it. And the two-wheel trailer is also very satisfactory for making the Costco run. I can put a whole grocery cart full of stuff in there, and with the low gears that I have on the touring bike, I can do that. And except when I go there for gas, I never take my car down there.
So with panniers, and it seems to me that if a person was going to go more off-road touring, maybe you'd want panniers because a trailer might be hard to pull. What would be advantageous to panniers? Because you're right, it does make the bike...
It makes the bike ponderous. The other thing is that if you have panniers up in front, it blocks the wind. It's really, if you get a headwind, it really, really affects you. For single track, I would recommend a one-wheel trailer, the Bob, because it turns with the bike and leans and everything. Two-wheel trailer on the wooded trail would not be so good.
Right. Okay.
But I also use a couple of small panniers on the bike to keep things that I need readily accessible. I mean, my patch kit, my rain gear, camera, binoculars, snacks, that kind of stuff, so I don't have to dig into the trailer all the time. Also, when you have panniers, you got 4 compartments, and sometimes the panniers themselves have pockets, and so you got all these small spaces to put stuff. My trailer is one big space, a whole lot easier to pack. Loading the trailer is critical. You need quite a bit of weight, most of the weight on the hitch instead of behind. Otherwise, it gets squirrely. But that's what I use. I use the trailer, and I've got a rack on top of the trailer so I could put firewood or whatever else I needed.
So, do you find that the two-wheel trailer that you now use is easier and not as critical with the packing as the one-wheel trailer? I've heard that the Bob trailers, it's really important that you kind of understand physics because you need to really be careful about your packing.
I had a friend who was injured pulling a Bob trailer one time, and I don't know that anybody ever really figured out what happened. But I've come down pretty steep hills pulling my Burley. You know, it speeds like 30 miles an hour and never had a problem. You want to make sure that you can see a long ways ahead because it takes a while to stop.
Yeah, yeah, it's like a semi-truck. So this Alaska trip, what were the specific safety considerations you might have had?
Oh, I had a lot of people just, oh, the trucks. And the trucks were no problem. The truck drivers uniformly, if there was room on the road, they'd put a wheel over the line or even change lanes and get past me. If there wasn't room, they'd wait.
Whoa.
They were wonderful. The people who scared me were, old geezers like me who went into a dealership with a credit card and came out with a 50-foot RV and a 30-foot boat and no idea how much wind those things generate and how far the mirrors stick out and how long they really are before they can come back over. I've had a couple of scary episodes. One guy came down a hill when I was going up, and he was in my lane.
Oh.
And so I had to bail off on the shoulder on that one.
Wow. So
the other thing was I was traveling in bear country.
yes.
So at nighttime, I'd try to stop 5, maybe 10 miles before I was going to camp, get dinner out of the way, clean up, and make sure that I washed the pots and washed my hands, and then go down the road to a place where I could stop.
Ah, clever. So you didn't have any scents or anything. That's okay. That's really smart. So Dave, I want you to share some of the highlights of this trip because it was quite a trip, and I just want to hear some of the highlights and let's.
Oh boy, there were so many. Mostly the people. Met wonderful people. I met a couple of German tourists who were traveling on bicycles. They were going from Fairbanks to Patagonia with their 1-year-old. And the kids seemed fat and happy, and everybody was doing great. Met another guy from Germany in Hope, BC, and we had a chance to chat. And I met a lot of people on the road. The really outstanding things were, I pulled into the little town of Hope, or Burns Lake, British Columbia, and it had been raining, looked like it was going to rain again, and I pulled into the visitor center and I went in and asked the young lady, local high school girl, if for campground, and for some reason she didn't know that there was a municipal campground in town. But another guy heard me and said, "Oh, there's a campsite, I don't know, a couple of miles out of town." And so I said, "Okay." Went over to Subway and bought a sandwich that cost $7 for the same sandwich I'd pay $4.50 here in town. Got back on the bike and I went out there, and I went out a couple of miles, 3 miles, 5 miles, 10 miles, nothing. The roads built up, ditches on both sides with water in them, and barbed wire on the other side of the ditches. And so I was kind of getting perplexed, but there was a road coming out of a sawmill and a road going into a golf and country club on the right. Well, there was the pickup truck coming out of the sawmill, so I flagged the 2 women down who were in that, and they said, "Oh, well, why don't you stay over here at the golf and country club?" And I was thinking, yeah, right, I'll set up on the first tee. And they said, "No, seriously." So they called over there, and it turns out the lady, it was an older couple, and the lady used to do long-distance bike rides. Been all over British Columbia, went to Minneapolis once, went to San Francisco once, and they said, "Come on over." So I go on over there, and the guy's waiting for me out on the front steps, and he kind of shows me around, and there's a place with a picnic table, and there's trees for a windbreak, and it's elevated, so if it does rain, the water's not going to collect there. And it's got a picnic table and everything. And he says, oh, you won't be needing that. You'll be dining with us. So I had roast pork loin, roast potatoes, sautéed vegetables, chocolate bundt cake with ice cream for dessert, and wine to go with it instead of chili mac in the rain alongside the road. I stayed 2 days. But they were running this clubhouse by themselves, and they had a big party to come in the next day. So I stayed and helped them set up for that and wash dishes and so on. And I still swap Christmas cards with them. That was 10 years ago, 9 years ago.
So really, a lot of it is the people.
Oh,
the people in
yeah.
the little communities.
It was wonderful. People were extremely helpful. And if we have time, I got another little similar anecdote.
Well, we do have time. Let's hear it.
Well, I spent a couple of weeks with my relatives up in Alaska, and I was headed back, and I got out to almost to Tok, BC, and it was raining and lots of hills and rollers, and I was too hot in my rain gear going up, and I got cold on the hills coming down, and I passed the entrance to Elias Wrangell National Park, so I wheeled in there, and I told the lady I felt it was time to drop anchor, and she kind of looks, and then she says, well, wait a minute. And so she calls the phone and calls this guy and says, hey, you still got that cabin out in back? And I can't hear his side, but then she hangs up and says, yeah, you go up here a couple of miles to Midway Services, and the guy's got a cabin out there. He lets people stay for free, hikers and that kind of stuff. And I said, super. So I go on up there, and well, it wasn't a cabin, it was a school bus. And the school bus, it's sat out by itself, but the guy had it wired up. He had a gas stove in there. He had electric lights. He'd taken one of the bench seats out and turned another one around and put a table in the middle, so you had a little dinette area. Had a nice wood stove, 5 bunks in the back. He had a boom box with a selection of music. And interestingly, they had an iron bar that held the door shut because of the bears, which I was meticulous about using. But the only requirement was that I had to vacuum the place up, and there was a vacuum cleaner in there, and I had to split my own wood. And so I stayed there 2 days too. And they were wonderful. He was a guy who'd worked for In Focus down here for a while and retired up there. And he runs this campground supply and gas station out in the middle of nowhere, and maintains the huge generator for the local residents and businesses, for not many businesses up there for sure. But he goes out and checks the oil and makes sure it's got fuel and everything's humming right. And that's what he does. Wow.
So you just had some really great adventures. So you had to make some modifications to your plan. I know that a few things went awry. So did you kind of, as you planned this, anticipate that this was not going to go precisely like maybe a car trip would? Or did you find this to be frustrating or discouraging?
Well, I made a plan, and nothing was going to go wrong. But I'd budgeted like $20 a day for campgrounds, and figuring that sometimes I'd just camp out in the woods and wouldn't have to spend the $20. Well, 2012 was a really wet year in the Northwest and in British Columbia and clear up into Yukon. And I found myself, instead of spending 20 bucks on a campground, spending 120 on a hotel, and so I could dry out all my equipment and wash everything. And so there was some added expense for lodging, but also my sense was that the hotel keepers probably wouldn't be real keen on my firing up the stove and cooking dinner. So I ended up eating in the local, Denny's or some other restaurant and spending more money there. And I mentioned that, even Subway sandwiches were more expensive, quite a bit than down here. Plus, just about everything is taxed. I might have a slide in there, I can't remember if I did or not, of a shelf in the grocery store in Hazleton, BC, for a can of chili, you can get for 65 cents down at Costco, $2.09 plus tax. The box of Kraft macaroni and cheese, $2.09 plus tax. So, things were expensive. So the rain was the big thing that was unanticipated. I had to buy a new wheel in Quesnel, BC. Before that, I'd had to buy a new set of tires in Williams Lake. I was running on these folding tires, which are nice and light and convenient, and I had a couple of spares in case I got a flat. Unfortunately, they just weren't rugged enough. And I was changing a flat out in the rain outside of Williams Lake, and when I got to the motel that kind of patched the inner tubes and stuff, I was looking at this tire, and it was just shredded. It was seriously damaged, so I had to get a couple of new ones. The other big disruption to the plan, two more, was I was about 1 day's ride south of Prince George in an RV park, and it was a beautiful afternoon, and I pulled in, and they had an RV park and a campground and a big group picnic shelter and group campsite. And so I checked into the campground, and a guy who was going the other way was camping there too. So we had dinner together and everything. Right after dinner, it started to rain. So we both said goodnight, and it rained straight down all night long. And the next day it was still raining, and we went across the road to a little roadhouse and had breakfast, and then his knee was bothering him, so he called his folks from Prince George to come and get him. And I asked the people if I could stay another day, and the guy said, another sign, he says, well, yeah, why don't sit out there. Come into the picnic shelter, and you'll be out of the rain, and you can maybe let some stuff dry out and everything. And he drags over one of these big iron fire rings for me, gives me an axe and a bunch of firewood, so I had a nice little fire that night. And that afternoon, we had a big hailstorm, and I'd never seen golf ball sized hail before, but these things aren't round. They've got sharp edges on them, and if I'd been out riding, it would have, the impact would have hurt, but the edges would have cut my rain gear, damaged the cover on the trailer. As a matter of fact, some of the people in the RV park sat out underneath their awnings to watch the excitement. And the awnings were actually penetrated by these hailstones, and two skylights in different RVs were cracked.
Wow.
So I'm glad I wasn't out there. So that had planned to go from Prince George up to Dawson Creek and follow the Alaska Highway out, but from Dawson Creek, to Dawson Creek from Prince George, I'd have budgeted, 4 to 7 days. I wasn't sure, but there's no support out there. a few resorts and so on, but really not much. If something else happened like that, my gear would have been destroyed.
Yeah. Well,
So
let me just, before we go to our break, let me ask you to just give some quick parting advice, you know, for other people that are thinking about doing an adventure like this. Just some.
oh, definitely make plans, but you know, don't be slavish to the plans. You know, if you have to lay over a day, do it, and you know, take extra money. Lots of. I had 10 pounds of spare parts and tools that I had with me, more than what I've got here, and do it. To paraphrase Phil Knight,
Just do it.
Not a paraphrase; it's a quote. But start out with if you haven't done any touring, start out with somebody experienced who has done some. Take it easy, you know, shampooy. There's a really nice little campground about 7 miles north of Vernonia that's within reach.
Yeah.
The Big Eddy County Park. And you know, if you want to make 2 days out of it, you know, go there and then out to Fort Stevens or something like that on the coast. But definitely, you know, do it.
Do it. All right. Good advice. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and have a safety video, and we'll come back and talk to Dave some more. And this time he's going to talk about, we've got some stuff on the table here, what does he take with him, and get some more information about loaded touring. So let's watch the safety video.
Bike safe, bike smart. Hi, my name is Xander.
And my name's Elizabeth.
Over the next few minutes, we're gonna have some fun and talk about some pretty important stuff.
Some of it you've heard before, but it never hurts to hear it again.
And again.
And again. So here we go. Did you know that just falling off your bike is enough to get a serious brain injury? So play it safe. Wear your helmet every time you ride. It can reduce the risk of head injury by up to 85%.
And that's a lot. The helmet should be snug on your head and sit flat. The strap should form a V under your ear, and the chin strap should also be snug. 2 fingers should fit in between your eyebrow and your helmet.
Also, make sure your helmet meets safety standards. Look for a sticker that says CPSC. This stands for the Consumer Product Safety Commission.
All the stuff we talked about today is common sense.
But you still need to think. Be courteous and be predictable by always riding in a straight line.
Wear a helmet. And follow the rules of the road. Ride with traffic on the right side of the road. Ride single file.
Obey traffic lights and traffic signs. Check behind you before turning. Use proper hand signals.
Stop, look left, right, then left again before entering a street. And use caution at an intersection.
Make eye contact with other drivers. Be careful around parked cars and watch for objects in your path.
And at night, be seen to be safe.
Never assume that motorists or pedestrians will see you. Remember, bikes are smaller than cars, and if there's a crash between the two, any guesses who will win?
That's all the time we have. So remember these 4 words. Bike safe, bike smart.
So safety is vitally important whether you're touring or just riding around your neighborhood, although hopefully in your neighborhood you don't have to be careful like Dave was about bears. but that the helmet's fitting is really important. So usually at this point I try to encourage people to get out and ride their bikes, and summer is winding down, but there's probably plenty of good days left to ride in the month of September and even into October, and really throughout the winter. If you pick your time and pick your day, you can ride all year. Bike clubs in our area and meetup groups pretty much ride throughout the year, and I know with our club some ride leaders might cancel a ride because of super heavy rain, but really ice is the factor that will cancel a ride. If it's cold, we still ride. So to ride in the more inclement weather, you want to have fenders on your bike, not just for yourself so you don't get the stripe up the back of your nice jacket, but for the people around you. And also lights, like was in our safety video, and those are important in the gray weather or just as it gets kind of darker. And you can use whatever wardrobe you have, whatever activities you might already be involved in. You probably have warm clothes, gloves, and just kind of make that do as you slowly gather things that are specific to cycling. So let's get back to our guest, Dave McQuery. Obviously, he has a whole lot of information to share, and we're going to learn more now about what he packed on his bike for his loaded tours. So we have established, I think, Dave, that you are experienced and a mindful bicycle tourist. So let's talk about what you bring with you when you are on a loaded tour, and you did bring a few items to share with us. So let's start with the bike itself. What are some considerations that you make so that you're confident in your bike as you set out on these trips?
Okay, first of all, I would say a steel bicycle. If something breaks and you're out in, the hinterlands, you can always find a farmer or a rancher, somebody, maybe a machine shop in a small town that will have a welding outfit and can get you back on the road, at least on the road. If you've got carbon, titanium, aluminum, that's not going to happen. The equipment and the training for welding that stuff, and carbon you don't weld, is, it's just beyond most people and not very common. So that's the first thing. Second, you need a robust bicycle. That means brakes, wheels. You can have some high gears, but you definitely need some low ones too, because you'll be pulling substantial weight up the hill. And to give you in perspective, when I was up in Alaska, I was curious just about how much stuff weighed. So I rolled through a truck stop, and the combination of me, the bike, the gear, the food, the trailer, 302 pounds. So everything was fine. I rode every hill. I never walked it once. But that's the first thing.
Yeah.
I would discourage people from touring on a road bike except on a really easy tour. They're not really rigged for panniers and pulling. There is a tremendous amount of stress on especially the rear wheel going up a hill on a bicycle, and on both wheels if you're braking coming down. Road bikes are built for speed. They're supposed to be light, and as a consequence of being light, they're not as robust.
Yeah.
A mountain bike, on the other hand, it's robust, but it's heavy. And all the suspension, which can be nice, the suspension itself absorbs some of the energy you're putting into the pedals, and so they're not as efficient moving forward as a full-bore touring bike.
So it would, if you want to test the touring, like you talked about, a quick little trip out to Shampooy to see if you might use a road bike to do that kind of little test. But if you're really going to tour, you're going to probably want to look for a true touring bike.
Right, or modify something,
Okay.
which is what I did. But, you know, even if you do a shakedown, you know, to try it if I like it kind
Yeah.
of thing on a road bike, make sure you can, you know, adequately put the appropriate racks and so on, and it has the gears. Even going up Rex Hill to get over to Newburgh that's a pretty good climb.
Okay. Okay. The engine, and that would be the person pedaling the bike, the human. How did you get yourself ready for these bigger tours, both mentally and physically?
Well, for this one, you know, I was focused on it. I was, you know, okay, what can I do? I bought a fish scale that people weigh, you know, used to weigh big fish, salmon
Yeah.
and so on. And I was weighing all the pieces, and I was pretty appalled at the total. But I've got a friend who tours, and he says everything I take does double duty. Like his flashlight is his headlight and things like that. Me, I take two of everything in case something breaks. I mean, I carry, you know, extra little screws and bolts. Just I've had a bolt come loose on the rack one time, and the rack just went and fell off the back of the bike. Not on a tour, thankfully, but I was able to. I sacrificed a couple of screws that held on my water bottle cage and put the rack back, and got home. But that started me thinking, okay, and I carry, you know, a chain tool and some extra lengths of chain. I've got extra pins for my Shimano chain, a set of Allen wrenches, patch kit. I showed you the folding tire, a spoke wrench for my bike, and I got one that'll fit most other bikes in case somebody else needs help. And there's something that Morrow, bless his heart, turned me on to. It's a Kevlar string that will replace a broken spoke. And
Have you used it or something like it?
I never have on
Okay.
my bike, but I used it on the STP one time with
Okay.
a gal who had a broken spoke. And I thought, well, let's try this.
Yeah.
And it worked slick. I stayed right with her though, because I wanted it back. But they're cheap. They're only about $10. And they're really good. You can you can adjust them to the right tension. They're good. The stove depends on what you want to do with what do you want to do with the stove. If you want to boil water, you need a blowtorch. If you want to cook, you need to boil water, so you need to be able to get some heat, but you also need a simmer control. And this one's got one that's barely adequate. Some of them are much better. The thing, I've got a kind of a prejudice against the backpacking stoves with the little propane canisters. Because, you know, okay, it's getting low. Do I have enough for my next meal? And so you got a choice to make. You can either throw out usable fuel or maybe run out while you're cooking. And I don't like either one of those. So with a liquid fuel, I can refill. I carry another small fuel bottle so I can top this thing off, and you can get unleaded gas any place. And this is a multi-fuel stove. It'll burn diesel fuel, unleaded gas, alcohol.
Wow.
you know,
That is versatile.
yeah, it is. And like I say, you can get unleaded gas any place. It smokes a little bit. You can, you know, you
Yeah.
can see.
You're using it outdoors.
Yeah, you don't use it in your motel room. I
So
think that-
speaking of cooking, what kind of food do you take? What are you cooking on that thing?
Well, in the morning, I want to get on the road, so I boil water and have some instant oatmeal, and I usually have some ramen too with some extra bouillon cubes in there for something, and my cup of coffee, and rinse everything out, and I'm back. For lunch, fruit, salami, cheese, crackers is typically what I do. Dinner time, I usually, if I can, I get the freeze-dried stuff because it's convenient, it's tasty, it's nutritious, and so on. If I can't get it, well, there's always Kraft's macaroni and cheese and a can of chili, and you have chili mac. And that's, you know, good too. I toyed one time with putting tuna fish in instead of the chili, but then I was reminded I was in bear country and thought better of it.
Oh, okay. I know I watch some of the guys on TV that do touring, and one of them is really big into burritos. He seems to eat burritos, so he has a lot of flour tortillas and just a lot of refried beans, and breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that seems to be his go-to. And I know that some people just kind of make sure, maybe not on a big Alaska trip, but more local, make sure they stop at a store kind of on the way into camp at night so that they get their dinner stuff, so they're not hauling it all day long. They just kind of...
That's one of the big differences between backpacking and bike touring, is that backpacking, you go into the wilderness, and if you don't have something, there's no store.
Yeah.
On a bicycle, you're going through little towns all the time, and you should have an extra day's food in reserve. But
Sure.
you know, you can get a couple of days worth of stuff, and it doesn't take up a whole lot of room. One of the things I want to stress is when you're getting ready, make a list. Make lots of lists. A list of time. You know, how much lead time do I need to accomplish this? If I need to have the bike overhauled, if I, you know, so on down the line, and make an exhaustive list of what you're gonna take with you. I don't know if you can see that, but
well enough to see that it's very detailed.
yeah, it's, you know, if I got chapstick on there, I got matches, I got everything.
So did you
this is
refer to
kind of
that?
my,
Did you refer to that like we went up to the San Juans in August, which was a much simpler car camping trip? So did you just pull that list out and
I
kind
did.
of...
That's exactly right. And you know, there's a lot of stuff I didn't take.
Right.
I mean, I didn't take my fishing equipment, and the food budget was much smaller. But you know, the toilet kit, the cooking gear, I didn't take all of that, but I took some of it. The camping gear, I took most of that.
And I don't think you forgot anything.
I didn't need anything that I forgot if I did.
Okay, yeah. So just developing something like that, each of us, whatever our personal things are.
Make lists and pay attention.
Yeah.
Don't all of a sudden say, okay, well, I got it, let's go. Because maybe you don't got it.
Yeah, and especially touring. I mean, we had a car in the San Juan, so what about clothes? What did you take for clothing on such a long trip, and how did you maintain it? I assume you did laundry at some point.
Yeah, the plan was to stop in some town, someplace, and find a laundromat, you know, every week or 10 days. I didn't have that many clothes. I just kind of smelled bad for a while. But
well, at least you're honest.
With the rain, I was in the motels a lot, and so I was able to do, you know, laundry. And I actually dried the tent out in their dryers. You got to use the low settings and be kind of careful.
Sure.
For clothing, I had camp clothes, which consisted of sandals, convertible cargo pants. Convertible means that the legs zip off and turn into shorts.
Right.
So you got long pants, you got shorts, T-shirts. I don't have a lot of sun protection up here, so make sure I got a hat. And mosquito repellent, although the mosquitoes never really put in an appearance on that trip, which was a miracle.
Yeah.
Then I've got, my bike clothes, the jerseys, the shorts, tights, leggings, socks, the shoes, shoe covers, helmet cover, rain gear, gloves, waterproof gloves. I found that the shoe covers, they don't keep your feet dry. Water comes up through the little hole in the cleat.
Yeah.
So to get around that, I took one of those cheap grocery bags, put it over the shoe, and then put the shoe cover on.
Oh.
And it pretty much sealed up the hole, not totally, but it made it a whole lot easier to put the shoe cover on.
You can't be vain with that, though. If you're kind of vain about your appearance,
Well, people did snicker when I went into the store, but I just snickered back and said, "Hey,
my feet are dry."
But those were the two main things. I also had a warm clothes bag, which was there was a down jacket in there. There was a fleece jacket, not just a vest, that I'd use in the morning with sleeveys there.
Yeah.
Fleece, long pants, wool socks, and so on. And all of these I had in what they call dry sacks. That they're waterproof with a roll top, and they're waterproof. Matter of fact, I kept the trailer was loaded enough that I had to tie one of the bags on top of the trailer, and even with all the rain and everything, it never got wet in there. The sleeping bag, I have a down bag. Wet feathers are not warm. So I double bagged it in plastic bags. I put it in a compression sack to get it as small as possible. Double bagged it in plastic bags and then stuffed it in a dry sack. I have been cold and it's not fun.
So you do whatever you have to keep that from happening.
You have to have dry clothes. You just have to.
Yes, yeah. So you had mentioned earlier the Jim O'Horrow Memorial Columbia River Gorge Explorer. So I want to have a few minutes to talk about that. So you lead that ride every Memorial Day weekend.
I have for a number of years. There were, Jim O'Horrow, of course, started it. It's a 4-day loaded tour where, we're carrying our own gear and food. It's unsupported. There's no vehicle behind to pick up stragglers, so you need to be physically fit. Your bike needs to be, in good shape. Some people, carry enough food for the trip. Others, you can get dinner for the first night in Stevenson. There's a nice grocery store there. There's the second day you can get stuff at a little store in Bingen or Lisle, either one. There's sandwich shop in Biggs as you cross back over the river. And when you hit the Dalles, it's early on Monday morning of the weekend. So there's nothing open except restaurants. We traditionally stop at Cousins restaurants there, and then the fourth day we usually have a big group at the restaurant. I think it's called the Riverside or the Bridgeside restaurant now. It used to be the Charburger.
Right, okay.
And Cascade Locks, but it's a loaded tour. I'll be renting the campgrounds or getting the campsites on December 1st for next Memorial Day, because we want a bunch of campsites close together, people scattered to the winds. But we stay at Home Valley, just the other side of Stevenson, the first night, Deschutes River State Park the second night, and Viento State Park the last night, and then home. It's got O'Horo billed it as touring 101.
Yes.
And he just called it the Columbia Gorge Explorer, or CGE. In his memory, I have lobbied long and hard to get it renamed the Jim O'Horo Memorial Columbia Gorge Explorer, or the O'Horo CGE.
Yeah.
But it's a great tour. I've never had a bad experience. Well, that's not true. One of the wheels fell off of my trailer on the freeway one time and disappeared into the river. I never found it. I had to have a friend come pick me up.
And I know sometimes our bike club goes out on Memorial Day. We do a short ride and meet you guys
at Multnomah Falls.
Yeah, or wherever, right, and then come back like to Edgefield, McMinimans, and eat with you guys. So it's kind of really exciting. But I think, like you say, it's not a learning how. Although Jim billed it as a 101, like this is a lesson. Well, you should be fit. You should have some experience. It shouldn't be your first rodeo.
Have a shakedown.
Yeah.
But there are numerous people along this thing with mechanical skills, with tips on shifting. Just
it can be. Well, we can always learn as we ride our bike. So, Dave, thanks a lot for coming and telling us all about touring and your adventures. And I'm sure you have a lot more to share. We didn't even touch on using an e-bike for touring. I mean, one of our bike club members anyway has done that. So that's a possibility, but maybe takes a little more logistical thinking, planning, like you talk about all the planning you did. Now you have to involve a battery every day. So, there's a lot more to talk about, but again, this Jim O'Horo Memorial Columbia Gorge Explorer Memorial Day weekend, and if you go to Portland Bicycling Club and look for that CGE, Columbia Gorge Explorer, you can get more information. Not too soon to start thinking about that, and stay in shape over the winter.
It's on the Portland Bicycling Club website under events.
Yes, okay. So thanks again, Dave, for joining us, and he's shared his passion with us, and so I hope you've come away with a little more information, a better grasp of touring. By riding with others, you can increase your skill, and so join some groups. Like Dave said, a lot of bicycling can be just socialization. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.